Okay, so I'm going to talk about how to find p-values and how to come up with some conclusions. These are in the homework, the problems 3 through 6 in the Chapter 8 homework, and this comes from section 8.1. So let me just kind of talk about p-values first. Okay, before I do that, I just want to kind of remind you here that there's two methods. There's a p-value method and there's a critical value method. We're talking about the p-value method here. So what we're talking about is how to find the p-value, what they are, what our decision is, and then how do we go from there. So we're just kind of doing a couple examples from here. Okay, so first of all, a p-value is the probability of getting a value as at least as extreme as your test statistic. Okay, so how do you find it? And 8.1 only, you will have to actually do it out with your calculator. And 8.2 and on, the different functions on your calculator will give you the p-values, but just for this very first section, they will ask you to find it. And the way you find it is use normal CDF, because it's a standard normal curve. Let me just kind of zoom in here and show you how to do this. So you start with what type of test you have. Is it left-tailed, right-tailed, or two-tailed? How do we tell it to focus? There we go. Okay. And then you kind of follow through there to find it. Okay, so let me just go ahead and start one of the homework problems, and then we'll do another one after that. Let me just pause for a second. Okay, so I pulled up one of the homework examples that I provided for you, the number 4. There's 3 of them in here. I'm going to do the one that's labeled number 4, but in the actual homework it's like number 3 through 6, because the numbers are off just a little bit here. But it says the test statistic is 0.99, and you're testing claim that p is greater than 0.2. Okay, so if we kind of go back here, we have to decide whether it's left-tailed, right-tailed, two-tailed. So let's go back to what we covered in the previous problems. First thing we have to do is come up with the claim. This is a claim right there. Step 2, if you remember, and again, you could just follow along here if you like, is what's true when the claim is false? What's the opposite? And that'd be less than or equal to. And the third thing, you come up with the null and the alternative. So we pick whichever one of these does not have the equal sign. That'd be this one. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That'd be this one. This one does not have equal sign. That'd be the alternative. And then the null is always equal to. Okay, so I create some videos over this. If you miss this part, this is the first 3 steps. You can check out those videos if you need to. Okay, so for this one, if I look at my alternative, I know it's pointing to the right. So right away, I know it's a right-tailed test. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. There's a video about that too. So I'm going to draw a standard normal curve with a right tail. Okay. Now what I want to put here, it should be my test statistic, and they have to give it to you. There's my test statistic, 0.99. And what they're asking us to do, well, first of all, they ask what type of test it is, then they want us to find the p-value. So the way we find the p-value is we use normal CDF, and we follow this chart. It's a right-tailed test, so it's the area to the right of this test statistic. Our test statistic, if you remember, was 0.99, so I want to find this area right here. So the way I do that is I put in normal CDF. This goes back to chapter 6. The low, this is my low value. It goes to infinity, so I put the, you can't put infinity in your calculator, so you put a bunch of 9s. And 0, 1. And then from that, you should get your answer. It should be 0.161. Okay, so that's your p-value. Okay, so that's our p-value. Now we have to come up with a conclusion. The conclusion is always if the p-value is smaller than alpha, which is significance level, you're going to reject the null. You're going to fail to reject otherwise. So I want to see what alpha is. Alpha is 0.05. So what I want to do is I'll compare this with alpha. So here's my p-value. And I want to compare it with my significance level, which is 0.05. In this case, it's greater than. Okay, so if it's greater than, you're going to fail to reject the null. decide which one we use here, when they'll talk about this a little bit more in the next section, but whenever you reject the null, you assume the alternative is true. In this case, we did not reject the null, so we can't prove this to be true. So there's not sufficient evidence to prove that this is true. So be part C for that one. Okay, so that's the first example. I'll do 2 more, just so you have an idea.